Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Road to Purpose, episode 4. My name is Angus. Excited to be back. In the last episode, we discussed a lot about my personal story with traveling and things like that. And I really enjoyed creating that kind of episode that wasn't so planned. With the first two, I made a lot of notes and I kind of followed a structure. And it was very, very, not rehearsed, but it had a structure to it. And I guess that was kind of stressful in a way because I thought, oh, I have to follow this structure that I've laid out for myself. And I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the previous episode where I was kind of just riffing. But all in a way, like I think that episode had a very good structure because it just followed like in chronological order what happened, the story of events, and what led me to become a digital nomad. So if you haven't checked out that episode, would highly recommend listening. It's a good bit of context for this podcast. I'm back today with the turtleneck. For those of you just listening, can't see that. Here in Bogota, it's a little bit chilly, and I've been looking around for the last week or so for a like thick jumper. I have one, which is like this beige like quarter zip, which I really like, and I was looking for something just like a regular like crew neck jumper, and I can't seem to find like one with like a good level of thickness to it to deal with the cold of Bogota, because Bogota does get pretty chilly at times. Today's actually a bit warmer, but in my apartment I'm just wearing this because like I just want to keep warm, and I haven't whacked the turtleneck out for a long time. So so yeah, in this episode I want to talk about solo travel. Solo travel is something that for me has worked absolute wonders. Um, it's something that if you listen to the last episode, you'll know that I have a lot of experience with. I almost always travel solo. I do really enjoy traveling with other people, but very like select friends, I guess. There's one friend in particular who I've been away with in the last just over a year ago. We went away for a week, and that was really cool. And we kind of have a similar like approach to travel, so it worked really well. But in order to find that approach, you kind of need to take your own trip and take kind of travel on your own terms. So I think this is actually a very good self-improvement tool, which is why I'm going to talk about it on the podcast. Because for me, this is the single most thing that has made the most difference to working out how I want to live my life, along with the personal manifesto. But that I only came across that idea because of traveling, because of the people I met traveling. So I took my first ever solo trip 2 years ago to Latin America, to Colombia first. And honestly, there is a moment. So I originally wanted to travel with friends. I'm going to be completely honest. I originally wanted to travel with a group, or just one other person. I actually did have plans with a Colombian friend who I was friends with in uni. They were kind of very loose plans, but something we just talked about. And he eventually said that he didn't want to do that, just wanted to like get a job, and that's cool. That's perfectly fine, obviously. And then I was kind of left without anyone to travel with. And I remember talking to my family about this at the time. I was like, oh, I really want to go and see the world. I really want to go and experience other cultures, specifically in Latin America. And I've got no one to go with. And my mum, I remember saying to me, like, oh, well, you won't go alone, will you? Like, don't go alone. Like that. This is the single most scariest thing for her. So yeah, sorry, mum. Because what happened next was kind of mad. My brother has also solo traveled as well. So now she's used to both of her children solo traveling. Sorry, mum. Pretty stressful for you, I'm aware, but it's worth it, and I know you wouldn't want it any other way, really. So yeah, so I took my first solo trip in June of 2022. I arrived in Cartagena, Colombia, and getting used to solo travel is a very strange thing. But I was actually having a conversation last night with a girl I met in Peru 2 years ago. We've very much stayed in touch, and she's in the US now, living. And we were talking about some of the ways that solo travel kind of changes how you interact with strangers when you meet them, and it's like a really like beautiful way that you come to meet people So whenever I'm so like comfortable now after solo traveling for so long, I'm so comfortable with being around people that I don't know and like putting a level of like trust with them, or just spending like a large amount of time with someone that I don't know very well, that that has become very normal. And it's a really like nice thing when you could just like meet anyone and say, oh, okay, well, we'll make this plan together, we'll go and see this thing together. And you don't feel uncomfortable, you feel completely comfortable around the other person even though you don't really know them. And this is something that you kind of have to get used to when you start solo traveling, because if you're going to meet other people in hostels or in any like networking event, I don't know, like how else do you meet people solo traveling? That's a good way. The majority of it is in hostels, I'm going to be frank. um, so if you don't like living in hostels, that's something you kind of got to get used to. So in terms of why solo travel could be beneficial in terms of self-improvement, it teaches you like a number of skills that you wouldn't really come across in everyday life. For example, firstly, you've got to be extremely disciplined because you've got to live out of a backpack. So I always carry 2 backpacks solo traveling. The first time I traveled, I bought a checked hold bag and a rucksack. Now, I haven't done that since I went on that first trip. I now travel with 2 hand luggage bags, one big one small one, but the small one's just for technology. But that's only because I'm working and traveling. You have to be extremely disciplined because you have to learn to live with a few things and control your spending, so you don't just go and buy a load of other stuff to like bulk out your bag and then not be able to transport it. And if you're planning on taking like flights during your trip as well, you have to be very disciplined with where you buy things like liquids. You can't pick up things like bottles of alcohol or something like that if you wanted to do that. It's not really viable. So you have to, with every purchase that you make solo traveling, you have to keep in mind how it's going to affect the rest of your trip. Because if you pick up something super heavy, you're going to be carrying it around between stops, and you're just going to hate yourself for it. You're going to hate yourself for buying it. And I think that's one very clear thing with solo travelers, is that that I've met, they all have a level of discipline. And if you want to keep clean and tidy, which I am very much a fan of. Personally, I like to wear clean clothes, be well presented if I can. And that's definitely possible living from a backpack, but it means you have to organize things like your laundry and bring enough of certain things like pants and socks to not end up re-wearing stuff. So these all seem like pretty trivial things, but when you're on the road for a long time, that's basically like your life, organizing these things to enable you to live out of a backpack is kind of crazy. Actually, it is definitely a frame of mind that you get put into when you're out there, and it can be sometimes quite difficult to get out of it when you return back home. So it teaches you discipline, and I would kind of compare it to like, it's not the same thing at all, but if someone joins the army and they have to like live out of their backpack and be extremely organized, you kind of associate like the army with being extremely organized with their things, and not to the same level at all. But you have to learn some of those skills to organize yourself for where you're going. Like, I don't know, simple things like if you're going to a hot area, make sure all of the clothes that you're going to wear for that area are in the top of your bag, so that when you arrive, you don't have to pull your entire backpack apart, things like that. That's just kind of like logical planning, I guess. But it's not something you would immediately think of if I told you what are some of the thought processes I have when I'm alone and traveling. You also have to learn to be sociable and outgoing in order to make friends. So, as I said before, the main way that I've met people with solo traveling is in hostels. Now, recently, I've met some people who would have told me that they're really not okay with the idea of like staying in hostels. And I think that's crazy, because if you have tried living in hostels, you'll know that it's actually fine. Like, you get used to it very quickly. Um, and it's usually not that bad. Like, granted, the quality of hostels varies a lot. I've stayed in some really, really high end hostels, which are basically like hotels. And there's some really interesting hostels actually where you get like a little box in a way. So there's like I don't know how to describe it exactly, but like you sleep more in like a little container with a blind at the end rather than a bed. I mean, there is a mattress in there, but you get a lot of privacy. I mean, this has its advantages and disadvantages, of course, but not all hostels are just like, open beds with no curtains. There's a level of privacy depending on the hostel, basically. You get party hostels that are usually less private, and then you get more upmarket hostels that are usually a bit nicer to stay in. I prefer staying in them in general. I prefer to pay a little bit extra to have things like a curtain across my bed and a nice locker, good facilities in the hostel. But then saying that, sometimes you can pay, at least in my experience in Latin America, $5 to $8 a night and get something that really is a top quality hostel that is basically a hotel service with breakfast included. And you think, wow, how on earth was that so cheap? So it really varies, and you'll have good and bad experiences. But if this is something that you've never done, if you've never stayed in a hostel before, I would urge you to just try it. Try it for 1 or 2 nights, maybe just one night to begin with. If you find yourself hating it, I would actually urge you to try it just one more time in a different one, because maybe you had a bad hostel experience. But in general, I think it is a very positive thing to try. It's a great way to meet people. The people that you find in these places are very open-minded, they really are living their best life. They're out exploring a new part of the world and living on a budget. Some people's budgets vary as well. You can travel on shoestring budget, where maybe you won't even stay in any nice hostels. And for me, that's not really a sustainable way to travel. I prefer to have a little bit more comfort than that. But some people do travel like that. Or perhaps you have like a very high budget and you meet people who are staying in a lot of Airbnbs. You meet a lot of couples who are traveling together, and sometimes it works out as better to stay in Airbnbs. You get people traveling super fast on 2-week vacations. You get people who are traveling really slowly on 6-month trips. It's a real melting pot of people who are really doing different things based on their situation. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, honestly. You can meet someone on a 2-week holiday who works at Amazon. That happened to me recently. I met a software developer from Amazon in the US who's on his 2-week holiday and was super stressed about his job. And then alternatively, I could meet like someone who's just finished university on a 6-month trip around the continent of Latin America. And it's nice to have that mix. And it really teaches you a lot about what's possible in a way, and what situations you might like, and what might be the like best fit for you and what you are looking for in life. So I think this is a really positive thing. The people you meet, a lot of them for me have been friends for life. Honestly, there's been people who I had such good experiences with, and we just kept in contact because we would just be friends, if we lived closer. And sometimes you meet people who you can go and visit again, or you meet up later on in your trip. I think that's a super cool perk of solo traveling, is the people you meet, because you get friends from all over the world, and you get to experience not just the culture of the place that you're visiting, but the culture of the people that you meet. So I think this is a very eye-opening experience. Also, so in my case, I've traveled South America. Let's not pretend here. The economy of these countries in South America is not fantastic, which means that I have not necessarily been in, but seen passing through the cities, a lot of quite like deprived areas. This is extremely, I'm going to say, humbling in a way. I think it's very positive to see that how other people are living. And if you can meet some locals from countries like this, to understand that life is actually very good in the countries that perhaps you are listening from. So perhaps if you're listening from a European or American country, maybe you don't realize that what's considered poverty in our countries, although that is bad, maybe it doesn't even scrape the surface of what poverty looks like in these countries. Right now I'm staying in Bogota. Actually, this part of the city is not fantastic that I'm in. I'm very, very, very careful. I don't ever walk alone at night. I don't wear flashy clothes or jewelry or anything like that. I'm extremely careful. and I leave the house with intention and a route. If I'm going out the house, I know where I'm going, and that's an important consideration to have. It's a safety concern, but I think if you take literally the precautions that I just laid out, you'll be there's a high probability that you'll be absolutely fine visiting these places. But the point I was coming to is that in this part of the city, there's actually a lot of homeless people living. I've been out at night with a group. I play football every week here, and on the main high street that's around the corner from where I'm living, there's a lot of homeless people at night quite openly using drugs in the street and things like that. And it's crazy to see that. Where I live in England, definitely wouldn't come across anything like that. But it's good to remember in a way that it's not it's not equal across the board. Maybe you'll see a documentary on how things are in other countries, but until you've actually seen it in person, it doesn't really resonate in the same way, in my experience. It's like when you take a taxi through perhaps Bogota, through Lima, through Medellin, you'll see the parts of the city where it's like it kind of looks like favela or something like that going up the mountain. This is a very real thing. People are living like this. The thing is that people live in these areas and come to the nice parts of the city to work and then come back to those places at night. It's just to sleep. This is a very real part of life here. And I think seeing it in person, not even going into those areas. I've never been into an area like that, with the exception of Comuna 13, Comuna 13 in Medellin, which is actually a tourist attraction. So it's been opened up for the graffiti and the artwork, but it's safe to visit. But I wouldn't say that's a good representation. Actually, it's a tourist attraction, as I said. But even to just see these areas from a large distance will have a profound effect on you if you see it. I think it's important to keep in mind how lucky you are, to keep in mind what opportunities you have, and that not everyone has these opportunities. And for me, I remember being, especially in Lima in Peru, where I went in the middle of winter. It was extremely cold, and there was it was very sand washed, the area. It's in the middle of the desert, so the streets and the signs and things are all kind of they've all been rubbed away by the sand, and it just kind of makes it look very depressing. The city is extremely grey. I'm not a big fan of this city, by the way. I don't think I'll go back. But apart from for the food in Lima is fantastic. But yeah, this area of the city, I remember going through on a bus and looking up the hill at all the houses, and I was like, Christ, there are people living like this day to day. It's humbling. It's good to keep in mind. And this is one of the perks of solo travel, is that you see places like this. You get to pull the curtain back on what you might not see on TV and see what it's actually like. If you didn't know already, a lot of people, if I tell people that I'm in Colombia, a lot of them get kind of worried about my safety. But actually, my experience in this country has been, until now, touch wood, fantastic. I've not had any serious problems. I've had problems which I mentioned in the last video, but none of them have been related to safety. I'm very careful. Like I said, I speak Spanish as well, so that helps. So yeah, if you wanted to learn a second language as well, solo travel is a great way to do that, because it will force you to actually use it. Another way to meet other travelers that I just remembered is through an app called Couchsurfing. Here's a travel story. So when I was in Peru, I used this app for the first time, but it has a feature to stay with people. So you can stay with locals who use the app for free. So I stayed in the north of Peru with the Couchsurfing ambassador for Peru. And he gave, actually it wasn't even on his sofa that I slept. I had my own room. It was a really nice experience. He cooked me lunch and dinner. Cooked me lunch, and then I took him out for dinner because he just putting me out for the night. So that was a really great experience. There was other travelers staying as well. So that's another way to meet people. Couchsurfing also has a feature where you can become available in the city to hang out. So you can meet other users of the app and just hang out literally right then or in the next few days. And you literally put up a little status of what you want to do. And other travelers will see it, and they'll decide whether they want to connect with you, and then you can make plans for that night. So this is something I used a lot in Bulgaria when I was there. I met some really, really cool people through that. And a lot of them are also hosts. So they love the app. They'll use it to meet the people in new cities. And then they'll also invite those people to come stay in their homes when they're in their home country. It's a really beautiful thing. It's a great community. It is paid, but it's very cheap. It's like in pounds, it's like £1.50 a month, I think. So you can just use it while you're away. You can pay for the subscription while you're traveling if you want. But I really like the feature. I've used it like the meetup feature. I've used that a lot, like I said, in Bulgaria. And I stayed with one person in Peru, which was a great experience. For me, it was a little awkward, if I'm being completely honest. I don't really like the dynamic of staying in someone's home, although it has a lot of perks. It could be a great experience in some places. I had a very good experience, but it's still one that I'm a little apprehensive to repeat. I do like the hostel vibe as well. It's a great way to meet other travelers and sometimes travelers from the country you're in, depending on where you visit. So to have all of these experiences, I think solo travel is super worth it. And if you ever have this itch to go and see the world, but you've got no one to go with, I think you should just go and book the flight. That's my take on it. If you've got the money saved, maybe you don't know how much money that is, but you'll make it work. You'll make it work. If you have whatever the pot of money you have, you'll make it work. Maybe you'll have to cook some meals on the way. Maybe you won't be able to eat in restaurants as much as you want to, but you'll make it work. Trust me. And honestly, 2 times I have left job. Well, actually, the first time I managed to negotiate sabbatical leave for 3.5 months for my trip. So that was fantastic. So I knew I had a job to come back to. So I could really enjoy the 3 months that I was away. And honestly, you don't know till you ask. If you are unsure if your employer would let you do that, the only thing you can do is ask them. And that might take some balls, basically. But honestly, if they say yes, you're going to be absolutely delighted and probably pretty nervous because it's about to happen. All your dreams about to hit you straight in the face. But it's something I would definitely recommend. There are a lot of precautions to take while traveling, depending on where you're going. It's easier to travel in places like Europe, I would say in general. Asia is very well trodden. But for me personally, I like to go to places that are a little bit unusual, a bit off the beaten track. Even here in Colombia, to stay as long as I have in Bogota is not exactly normal for tourists. And a lot of the places that I visit outside the city, like for example, this last weekend, I took a trip out the city to a town nearby. That is a very like local place to visit. I saw 1 or 2 white tourists, like European tourists, apart from myself, of course. This is a place that like Colombians go to visit. Those are the places I like to be. That's the authentic experience. You get the best prices for stuff, and you get a really unique experience, and you get to try the local food, and all of that is a part of solo travel. And particularly food for me is something that is one of the most enjoyable parts. I spend a lot of time eating in restaurants and trying new things from the bakery, and it's all part of the experience for me, and of course the people that you meet. So yeah, if you're considering the idea of travel and you're like I was, you've got no one to go with, I would really urge you, if you've got the funds to do it and you've got the time to do it, book the flight. Book it one way. Yeah, crazy, right? You don't have to book it one way, but I did. Both times I've been to Latin America, I booked the flight one way. And that's a very liberating experience. You know, the trip has no end date. You come back when you run out of money. But although yes, it is a very expensive thing to do, I think the benefits and the things that you learn along the way are valuable. Another thing that you'll learn very quickly is how to deal with crisis, because things will likely not go to plan. It's likely that along the way you will encounter some level of not necessarily disaster, but setback. Maybe it's as simple as missing a bus. Maybe it's as simple as not being able to check in to the hostel as early as you would like to. And you know, these might not seem like crisis, but when you've got all of your belongings with you and you're traveling with all of like a core set of things that you care about, the idea of having anything go missing or anything like that, yeah, you might lose some items. You might lose your phone, like I did in Peru. You might lose, I don't know, you might lose contact. There might be some crisis that happens that you're going to have to deal with, and the only person who can deal with it is you. And that is one of the best things about solo travel, is that you're completely accountable for your actions. If something starts to go wrong, you have to deal with it. There is no one who's going to like come and help you. I mean, yeah, you can fly home, you can leave, you could run away, but that's just going to teach you about yourself. How do you deal with things when they go wrong? And I think crisis management is one of the key takeaways I took from my trip. I've had a number of things go wrong on this trip, and I'm a lot more relaxed about it when it starts to go wrong. I mean, there was a large quantity of things this time, so I got pretty stressed, I can't lie. But when small things start to happen, I'm not extremely shaken. Also, I take steps to prepare for, like, for example, if I'm moving city, I'll take steps to prepare to avoid me being out in the street for a long period of time with all my things, stuff like that. And I think this is all lessons that you'll take away from your trip when you decide to jump on that, jump on your dream and follow it. I don't know if that's the expression to say. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this podcast here. If you are considering traveling solo, I hope this has given you some tools and some reasons to maybe jump in. One thing I would also like to add is, although I said book a one-way flight, have an idea of how long you want to be away. I've been away for 6 months now, and I've got one more month, a month and a bit left. This trip for me is too long. I'm glad that I worked it out, that I don't really like being away alone for so long. But for me, 6 months is too long to be solo traveling. I need to see other people. I need to have close connections around my family, my friends. So for that reason, I would say, for me, the sweet spot to start with was 3 months. I think that's a pretty good amount of time to be away. It's not actually a huge amount of time. You can come home after that and not a lot's changed. I'm coming back home and one of my mates has proposed to his girlfriend, and like a load of this one of my best mates has got a new job. The whole like dynamic back home is completely shaken up, so I'm gonna have to like reintegrate a bit and make my own changes. But that's one thing I would say, is maybe take more 3-month trips. If you've got like a huge list of places you want to visit, maybe break it up into smaller bites and take breaks in between, because it's very easy to get used to traveling and seeing incredible places, and then suddenly, like, when you see somewhere that is really beautiful, it doesn't hit in the same way, because you've seen a load of places that are really beautiful before, and it's just like, oh, just another one off the list. And it shouldn't be like that. So I think 3 months is a good sweet spot, at least for me. Everyone's different. 6 months for me solo is a long time. I'm missing home a lot. I'm ready to go back. Actually, I'm looking forward to going back. But I'm still making the most of my time out here in Bogota. It kind of sounds very selfish to say, oh, I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to go back to normality. But when I'm in such an incredible place, and Bogota is a pretty cool city, and so yeah, you've got to consider how long you want to be away. Maybe you have no idea, and that's a very like realistic place to be. But for me, I would say 3 months, maybe 2 months. That's a very good trip length. If you finish 2 months with the feeling, oh, I wish I had stayed longer, you'll know for the next time. Maybe stick another month on. But in my case, I never planned to be away for 7 months in total. That kind of happened because of me starting my own business and stuff. So yeah, I would not necessarily recommend jumping straight into a 6-month trip or longer. People go away for 9 months to a year. Maybe you're fine with that. Maybe you've got an experience in the past where you'll be fine with that. But for me, like, this trip is too long at the moment. And I will definitely travel again, but on a shorter trip, or move to a place with someone I care about, for example, like a partner or maybe a friend. It would be a lot easier if I had just one close friend with me. But that doesn't take away from the fact I love solo traveling. It's something I hope to continue doing for the rest of my life, even if they're just really short trips. I love the ability to pick the speed I travel at. I'm a slow traveler. That's why I stay in cities for such a long time. I like to just chill, try local food, meet local people, build nice connections. You know, for me, I came to Colombia this time with a list of food that I didn't try last time. And it's taken me, I've been in Colombia for 3.5 months nearly now. And I haven't even reached the end of that list yet. I've got like three more things that a Colombian girl gave me to try. And I'm not even at the end of the list yet. And I've been here for 3.5 months. So yeah, I really like to take my time and just like bit by bit, oh, try this. Oh, I'm in this situation where I've come across this thing that's on my list, on my food list. I want to just try that. Oh, I don't want to pack into a week, seeing all the sites around the city. If I could take across 2 months, I could take a load of weekends away. That's much nicer, much more relaxed. You can really get to experience the places and enjoy them. Like the contrast of countryside to city, for example. I could go away for a weekend, and it really feels like a holiday within a holiday, even though this trip hasn't technically been a holiday because I've been working. But I digress. So yeah, if you have got it in mind that you want to travel the world, I would highly, highly urge you to take that jump, take that leap, book the flight. You can work everything out afterwards. Book it for like in 2 or 3 months' time if you can. Just give yourself time to check out what it doesn't need to be that far in advance, to be fair. But if you need things like travel jabs and things like that, give yourself some time. And if you do need stuff like travel jabs, my advice would be book the flight and then immediately go to a clinic. But if you want to do it like closer, if you want to book a flight for like a month's time, go to like a travel jab clinic first, find out what you need, and then see how long it will take for them to give you the course of those jabs. So yeah, I had to do all of that on my first trip. I was extremely careful, and I got all of the like optional ones as well. Bit of a bit of a controversial thing here is that I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting too hung up on that. Get the essential ones, yeah, but if you're hung up on the ones which are like optional, like you don't necessarily need them. Some of them you only need if you're going to go and get tattoos or piercings. But if that's something you want to do, then yeah, you really need to read into that. But I remember getting rabies jabs, and the thing with a rabies jab is that it will not stop you from getting rabies. It just delays the amount of time before you need to go to the hospital to get a jab. So if you're traveling in like major towns, okay, you get bitten by a dog or something like that, or get bitten by an animal, you've got like 24 hours, but that's probably enough time. So most of the time there will be a hospital which can give you that jab for it within 24 hours. I mean, I think the 3 jabs that you get for rabies extends it by like another 24 hours. So then you have 48 hours to get to a hospital. Either way, you have to go to a hospital. But if you're going to go deep in the jungle or something like that, then yeah, it's pretty essential. But yeah, it all depends on what you're doing. I'm not telling anyone to not get travel jabs. Definitely get travel jabs, but the essential ones, in my opinion. And they're expensive as well. So yeah, better be safe than sorry though. And travel with insurance, for God's sake. I know too many people who travel without insurance. Stop traveling without insurance. Don't be stupid. Come on. Like, you really want to cover a medical bill if you fall off a bicycle or something like that? You really want to do that? No. Anyway, thank you very much for listening and watching. I really enjoyed recording this episode. This is something very personal to me, but I feel like it relates to self-improvement. It's really helped me along my journey. And yeah, I hope the quality of these podcasts is improving. I feel like I'm getting better at speaking to a camera and speaking on microphone, which is good. I'm saying less, although I just said it. And I'm trying to stop the thing where I say something that makes myself laugh and giggle. So I've been listening back to each of these podcasts, and I do this really annoying thing where I'll say something, I go ha 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 afterwards. And I was doing a bit of editing as well of the podcast. I tried to keep these as raw as possible, basically. But I was editing one episode, just trying to take a section out where I completely like messed up my words. And then I found myself like removing all of these like bits where I started laughing. I was like, this is just stupid. Like, stop doing this. It really doesn't sound good. And yeah. So I'm trying to be a lot more concise with my speech, try and deliver it in a better way. And yeah, hopefully, and stop saying things like, and yeah. This is all stuff I have to think about. So thank you very much for listening. and watching if you are watching on YouTube, or actually the video is available on Spotify as well. Please leave a good rating, a like if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, a follow on Spotify. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Ciao.